Well, welcome everybody. This is our day to recognize some excellent women of impact. I'm super excited. I got to read through some wonderful stories this past week and get to recognize some of these folks, and very excited about that. Before we get into some of these amazing stories and recognizing some of these women, I wanted to introduce a very special guest. Some of you might remember our excellent mayor of Punta Gorda, Lynn Matthews, was here, last year with us, and she graciously agreed to come back a second time around, so thank you very much for being here, and we're super excited to have her. Her accomplishments, if you've seen some of the things that she's been able to tackle with the city of Punta Gorda, as you can imagine, that is a very big task. Particularly after going through another hurricane. So a lot of stuff going on in Punta Gorda currently. But without further ado, I'd like to welcome up Lynn Matthews. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everybody. It's great to see all of you again, and I'm very honored to be here today to be part of this special event. It's just so much fun to be a part of the community and to get to meet all the people that live in our wonderful community. Certainly, I've known a lot of you for a long time. There's many people in this room who I've known for a very, very long time, and it's great to always be around you again. And you're all winners, in my opinion. I think it's really great that, that Southport has decided to offer this program each year and honor some of the wonderful ladies that live in this community. What's amazing to me is some of the stories that I read about all of you really, really resonate with me. You know, a lot of you grew up during your earlier years when women didn't go to college, women weren't allowed to do anything but be home and cook and clean and do laundry, right, Charlie? Yeah. He told me they changed the sheets for him every week. I said, I want to come here. That's one thing my husband doesn't do well. But anyway, it's really great to know that so many of you led such full lives, and you've made a big difference in the lives that you lived with your families and with all of your colleagues that you worked with, and what a great accomplishment some of you have done in your lifetime. Some of you had to be the head of household and the primary breadwinner. That in itself is a very difficult thing, and especially in earlier years. I mean, it's difficult enough now in 2023 for single parent families to exist and do well. So we're very proud of all of you. Each and every one of you had an incredible story to tell, and I think you should just be very proud of all of your accomplishments. So I applaud all of you. You were more than a wife and a mom. You guys had wonderful careers in many cases. You did many great things for nonprofit charity organizations. You led a lot of causes that were very important to many people, and you made a difference in a lot of people's lives. So good for all of you. And your strength really, really enriched a lot of lives. So very, very good things that I was able to read about all of you. I really take my hat off to you. I feel honored to have the opportunity to meet you all again here today, and thank you for being a woman of impact. You've all inspired me to keep going and do what I do and try to be the best at what I can be. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Lynn. I've got, I think it's 17, is that correct? 17 women that we are going to recognize today. And super excited because, again, I got to kind of get a little glimpse, a precursor to what we're going to share today. And some of these stories are pretty incredible. We've got a lot to go through. So some incredible stories that, you know, really paint a picture of how somebody has been able to impact the community around them or continue to have that impact here at Southport Square. So I'm going to jump right into it. I brought my bottle of water because I know as I speak today, I will probably need a couple of sips of water, so I apologize if I have to take a break and grab a drink. So we're going to get right into this in no particular order. I don't believe so, unless it's alphabetical. Okay, all right. So Smita had a method to her madness. It is alphabetical. By last name, I take it. All right. So we are going to start off with Pat Bird. Is Pat here? I see Pat. Oh, there's Pat right there. So Pat Bird. So Patricia was born in Wooster, Ohio. After finishing high school, she attended 2 years of college before getting married. Soon she became a busy mother of 3 children. When her oldest child reached high school, she realized that she needed to finish her degree to secure a good job and be able to provide for her family's education. With determination and hard work, Patricia earned advanced degrees as a reading specialist and a learning and behavioral disorder specialist from the University of Akron. She then began working at a residential treatment center for delinquent boys aged 10 through 18 in Wooster, Ohio, where she remained employed for 16 years. Patricia faced many challenges in her job as the boys came from different backgrounds and ages, and many of them struggled with reading. However, it was gratifying to see them develop a love for reading and walk back from the library with a book in hand after she worked with them. One of the students was able to read the driver's license exam test without any assistance, which brought tears to her eyes, I would imagine. Although her job was challenging, Patricia was passionate about her work and cherished every milestone the students achieved. She and her husband were both educators from the same school district. After retiring, they traveled the world together. Patricia remembers a moment when they were visiting Moscow, Russia. It was midnight and they were both alone at Red Square listening to the change of guards, which was mesmerizing. They moved to Florida in 1997 and settled in Fort Myers, where they volunteered at the Echo Farm. The work was very interesting and they wanted to get involved in the project. It was wonderful watching the place grow and be a part of UNICEF, providing food to poor people across the globe. Patricia also volunteered at the local hospital as well as the library. Unfortunately, her husband passed away after they settled in Southport Square. At Southport Square, she helps at the community library because she is passionate about books. Her neighbors perceive her as a very warm and friendly person who is always ready to help. She is active in water aerobics and several other programs of her choice. She is content with her life and enjoys her wonderful family, which includes 3 children, 7 grandsons, and 2 great-grandsons. Patricia's story is one of dedication, passion, and love. She spent her life working as an educator, helping students achieve their goals and celebrating their accomplishments. After retiring, she and her husband traveled the world, exploring new cultures and volunteering to help those in need. Even after her husband passed away, Patricia continued to make a positive impact in her community by volunteering at the local library and participating in water aerobics and other activities. She cherished her life, including its challenges and accomplishments, and was surrounded by a wonderful family. Patricia's story is an inspiration to all those who strive to make a difference in the world and live life to the fullest. Patricia Bird. Awesome story. This is written by Joyce's son, so you'll see when I start off here. Greetings, my name is Anthony Cleveland. I'm really not Anthony, but I'm posing as Anthony today. So, my name is Anthony Cleveland. I am the eldest son of J.D. and Joyce J. Cleveland. My father is deceased and my mother resides at Southport Square, which brings me to the motivation for this note. According to the great minds of developmental psychology, and he goes on to list some very long names. They look Polish and German together, so I'm not going to try to pronounce them. Our personality is extremely influenced by both our genetics, nature, and early parental interactions, nurture. Thus, I and you are very much products of mom and dad, which is a very true statement, right? As I reflect upon the contribution my mother made in my developing years, 3 words come to mind: conscientiousness, fidelity, and faith. Obviously, both she and my father influenced my development in numerous ways. However, these 3 concepts seem to keep coming to the forefront of my internal cognitive process when contemplating my mother's specific contributions. The desire to do one's duty or work well is one of several definitions for conscientiousness. As I explain the concept to my first-year college psychology students, conscientiousness, can be thought of as a person's work ethic and is a highly reliable predictor of academic or career success. My mom has always been a hard worker. I am not sure how she did it. Being a full-time mom, wife, and employee, she was always there for my younger brother and me. My brother's cerebral palsy compounded the situation, of course, but she was there for us. For every athletic event or band concert, I knew that somewhere in the stands I would find her cheering me on. In fact, she served as our team's scorekeeper through 7 years of Little League Baseball. That's a long time, by the way, because I've done that for 1 year, and it's a lot. All right. As I reflect now upon her consistency, I marvel at the fact that while she was there taking care of all the necessary domestic chores associated with being a wife and mother, she managed to secure several college degrees while holding down a full-time job. Born out of necessity, my mother worked hard during her corporate career. Starting at the lowest rank of girl in the typist pool, she continuously battled the rampant discrimination against her gender in Southern culture. Mom despised the Beverly Hillbillies, a popular TV show at the time. While she may have not shattered the so-called glass ceiling, she certainly weakened it. Through her efforts and countless unnamed others like her, the women of following generations, moms and their granddaughters, are finally starting to break that glass. Another fact of conscientiousness is individual morality or personal ethical standards. My mom and dad enjoyed 70 years of marriage. While things were not always smooth sailing, the fact that their relationship lasted so long was due to several factors, including preeminently their shared common core values. I cannot remember a single time when my parents would have a disagreement over what is right or wrong behavior. Although my brother and I would occasionally cross the line, LOL, we both knew the consequences of behavior that my mom or dad would consider inappropriate. In our household, Dad was a disciplinarian. However, it was our mother that truly, by sheer example of observable behaviors and a variety of difficult situations, significantly impacted the development of my moral reasoning and ethical standards. The word fidelity is derived from the Latin fidelis, meaning faithful or loyal. I may be things to different people, but there is one personality characteristic which I believe wholeheartedly describes me. I am loyal. And Mom taught me that, not necessarily through words, but by living out her life with deepest fidelity to those she loved and trusted. To her, family meant everything. No matter the dumb things my brother, father, or I might have said or done, we knew deep down that Mom was there for us and would always be there for us until she took her last breath. Finally, the third construct that readily comes to mind is faith. The writer of the letter of the Hebrews, New Testament 11:1, New Living Translation, asks a simple question: what is faith? The answer follows: it is confident assurance that what we hope for is going to happen. It is the evidence of things we cannot yet see. I can't remember a time in my life when I did not believe in the one true God or in his Son, Jesus, the Messiah. Even as a scientist, a BS in chemistry, I have found that the more I understand the great mysteries of the creation, my awe of God's genius grows, in fact, multiplies in an exponential fashion. Would I have come to this knowledge of the Lord on my own? Perhaps. There are colleagues of mine who are both psychological scientists as well as agnostic who propose that religious outlook on life is simply a combination of an unquenchable desire to understand and connect with the stardust of the cosmos, a spiritual perspective, plus a deep unconscious fear of death, the Freudian perspective. Is my belief in God a philosophical assumption? Perhaps, but if it is a hypothesis, I believe with every ounce of my being that one could, using sheer logic combined with an astute eye for the marvels of nature, arrive at the same theoretical conclusion. The creation could not have happened, and yet I do not have to logically convince myself of God's existence. I had my mom. That was a long way to get to faith, but my goodness, that is definitely speaking loudly for Joyce as being a mother. Life was not easy for her. There were some bad, awful times, and she, being human, must have wondered, are you there, God? Why are you allowing this to happen? And yet, through those painful experiences, I never once heard my mother say, there is no God, or if there is a God, he must have abandoned me. Not one time. Not in speech, or perhaps more importantly in action. In fact, just the opposite would happen. When my brother and I were little squirts, she would come into our room every evening, get down on her knees, and pray with the two of us. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. This section would always be followed by a series of God bless, fill in the blank, mommy, daddy, granny, grandpa, etc. The list would occasionally get rather long. Satan himself could have released the hounds of hell into our family's life at that moment in time, but it was then, during those nightly talks with the Almighty, my faith and my fate became sealed. One final note, thanks, Mom. Joyce Cleveland. I'm going to just change hats from Anthony Cleveland. I am now Andy Gillum. I look just like him, don't I? All right. My name is Andy Gillum, and I would like to share an insight into my wife's impactful life. Jeannie was born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her father died at a young age, so she was raised by her mother and her grandparents. They lived in the town of Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. Wauwatosa? All right. And that's where Jean went to school. She had one sibling, and that was an older sister. While most all of Jeannie's friends from high school went to Madison, Wisconsin to go to college, Jeannie stayed in Milwaukee and went to Marquette University to get a degree in dental hygiene. After she and some of her friends passed the board exam in Wisconsin, 3 of them decided to go to Denver, Colorado to go work as a dental hygienist. Jeannie lived in Denver, Colorado, or shall I say just outside of Denver, for a few years where she met a football player and fell in love and got married. They had 3 boys, and after a few years of a challenging marriage, Jeannie moved south into San Diego County and divorced her husband. She was raising her boys by herself with basically no help from her husband. He was never much of a father to her sons, and after a period she met me, for better or for worse. You'd have to ask her which that is. Should we ask right now? I won't put you on the spot, Jeannie, it's okay. But I think it's the best. We met dancing in a country western bar, and after 6 months, I asked her to marry me, and she accepted for some reason. I was in love with the woman. I think from that first day I met her, I could have never have asked for a more loving, kind, caring, intelligent mother and wife of our kids. I had 3 children, and she had 3 children, so together we were the Brady Bunch. Works, right? She accepted my 2 girls and 1 son, and I accepted her 3 boys as our own. Saying it has been a whirlwind marriage would be putting it mildly for 6 kids. There is always going to be some kind of problem, and we had our share. Jeannie was not only a dental hygienist, she also had her own business as a mild function therapist. Jeannie gave lectures all over the state of California on substance abuse. She got herself involved in Al-Anon, and that's what gave her the strength to divorce her former husband. She was involved in different things in the dental community during her younger years in California, and the Dental Association of California decided to start a program called the DEC. I think it's called Diversion Evaluation Committee. Does that sound about right? All right. At the time, there was so many dentists that were taking drugs but still working on patients. The state of California had to do something. There were 11 people on this California board, 10 men and 1 woman, and that was Jeannie. She was appointed to the DEC by Ronald Reagan. It was a very, very highly respected organization. Their purpose was to go out and find the dentists and hygienists that were on drugs and working on people and get them into a treatment program. It was the first such program in the country at that time. There is now a program like that in every state that followed suit after California got that program off the ground. Jeannie and I have had a fabulous 40-year marriage, and I think it's because before we got married, we sat down and talked about what we wanted from our marriage and what we did not want from our marriage. Both of us had some problems with our first marriages, and we didn't want to go through it again. So consequently, in 40 years, we've never had an argument that amounted to anything, nothing you could even call a fight. We've had disagreements over our kids, but what family doesn't? Jeannie was involved in a bad car accident. At the time, she had 7 breaks in her ankle, a concussion, and a broken arm. So it was a challenging time for her, but she recovered, got back on her feet, and went back to work at a naval base in San Diego. She worked there for many years as a senior hygienist. She practiced as a hygienist for over 45 years. They thought they were going to have to amputate her foot, but we went to a couple of different doctors, and one local doctor that did quite well decided that he could save her foot, which he did. Thank God for that. You must understand, Jeannie's life kind of revolved around dancing. And that's how we met, and that would have put us to an end of all of our dancing, which would have really killed both of us. We danced 3 or 4 nights a week from the time we met until 16 years ago. We square danced, line danced, and did some ballroom dancing. Just about anything that had anything to do with dancing. We clogged on our exhibition team. That's impressive. I'll have to trial that out a little bit later, see how y'all still do with that. But you clogged on an exhibition team for 6 years. Most people don't even know what it is, but it's a very good exercise dance. If you've ever seen clogging, it's definitely exercise, that is for sure. Anyway, during these years, we were into motorcycles and belonged to the Harley-Davidson Club in El Cajon, California, which is a great club with 400 members. They did a lot of outings, family outings, and on this one particular day, we were on our way up to Utah to go to the state parks, where there were 70 motorcycles in our group going up the freeway. They were the 6th motorcycle back in the group, and I lost the bead on the back tire of the motorcycle. So is that a bead on the back tire is something that comes off? Okay. So the motorcycle was a full dress Harley, and Jean was properly sitting right behind me. And we lost the bike, started swaying back and forth severely, and it looks like back and forth between the motorcycles. I went into a berm and hit the soft sand and rocks. The handlebars jerked out of my hands, the bike nose dug in and it threw me off the motorcycle, through the windshield, the bike down, did a 360 degree in the air. I was told, and Jeannie was still on it when it landed. She was unconscious when it hit the ground. When the group got stopped and got over to help her, she had no pulse. I was about 150 feet away from her when I picked myself up on a rock and was knocked unconscious for a period of time. There was an EMT coming down the road on the other side of the freeway and noticed the accident, stopped and jumped across the berm or the center divider and got to us, and she had no pulse. She was basically dead, the EMT getting her revived and going again and calling medical air flight from San Bernardino. He said she had been dead for about 3 minutes. By the time he got her going again, they took her down to San Bernardino Medical Hospital, Yorba Linda, one of the finest hospitals I've ever been in. I got out of the hospital the next afternoon. They took me to Barstow, California, and was taken down to Yorba Linda Hospital by my daughter so I could be with Jean. When I got to go in to see her, it was heart-wrenching to see her laying there with so many tubes put into her body to keep her going. There is a nurse sitting up on a high stool looking at 7 different monitors. They were plugged into her. They had drilled a hole into her skull to relieve the pressure from the concussion. She had 7 busted ribs, a broken shoulder, skull fracture, and her right eye was looking backwards. Once we finally brought her out of the coma 29 days later. She was on a respirator for 26 of the 29 days of the coma. I had talked to a nurse that was there, and she told me to try to get the doctors to get her out of the coma because the longer she was in a coma, the harder it would be for her to recover. So that's what I did the next day. We had a long conversation over what her recovery would be if she stayed in a coma, and I convinced him to bring her out of the coma so I can get her started to recovery. So they agreed and brought her out of the coma, and that's when I noticed that her right eye was turning clear back to the back of her head. After several different hospital stays, I moved her to Sharps Hospital over in San Diego for the rest of her recovery time. That's where they started her physical therapy and all the other therapies that they had her going through. I would go over in the evenings and I would get her out of bed. It took quite a while to get her to where she is today. After I got her out of the hospital, we went to live with one of our sons up in Fallbrook, California, and she continued her therapy. And then we decided we were going to buy a motorhome so we could get her out and see something other than just the 4 walls of the house. So I went to Phoenix, Arizona, bought a motorhome, and we took off. Jeannie did not put one sentence together for 3 years. That's how bad she was mentally, but she never gave up, and I never gave up. After a lot of hard work and perseverance, today you would never know that because she's a very smart, intelligent lady like she was 40 years ago. We still love to go camping, and we still do it at the age of 80 today. At Southport Square, Jeannie enjoys beading and is involved in jewelry making. She creates some beautiful jewelry for her friends and family. She enjoys the ladies' brunch group she has organized, as well as other engaging programs. This is pretty much Jeannie's story. She is so strong, she never gives up. She finds reasons to keep moving forward. She has accomplished so many things in her life, and I am so very proud of her. Her determination is truly inspiring and serves as a reminder to all of us that we can overcome even the toughest of challenges if we stay committed to our goals. Jeannie Gillum. Sometimes a woman has a dream so compelling that she would move heaven and earth to achieve it. Literally, nothing could stand in the way of her fulfilling her goal and achievement that would affect not only the rest of her life, but that of her children as well. This is my mother's story. Not my mother, but the person telling the story. From the time she was a kindergarten student, Janine Boucher, did I say it right? All right, it's French, yes? Oui, all right. Janine Boucher knew that she just had to be a teacher. It was a calling, the insistent voice inside that pulled, prodded, and inspired. But life is what sometimes gets in the way when we're busy making plans. Janine's parents just could not afford to send her to college after high school, so she started work as a secretary at a major company in her hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts. Always practical, Janine had included in her college prep curriculum typing, shorthand, and secretarial science courses. What a good decision. She did just fine at work, received a couple of promotions, joined the company chorale and the bowling team, and finally met the love of her life, Len Gorman, at a jazz concert. And speaking of life, they were married in 1962, reveled in the birth of their first child in 1963, and presented me with a brother in 1964. Quick, yeah, boom, boom, boom. Needless to say, the idea of teaching was relegated to the background as Janine got involved in being a mom, volunteering at church and in the community, and helping her husband get his master's degree and further his own teaching career. Teaching. Talk about living vicariously. But as sometimes happens, an opportunity arose, and the voice has never ceased. Janine Gorman began taking college courses when we were young, perhaps 3 and or 4 years old. She began at our local Springfield Technical Community College, sometimes commuting with a neighbor, sometimes taking the bus. Over the course of several years, she completed her general courses and then transferred to a local private institution, American International College, to complete her degree. Because my parents had only one car, which my dad drove to work, my mother walked about 2.5 miles to and from school, uphill both ways, right? And in the snow, yeah, of course. But walked about 2.5 miles to and from school most of the days of the week. One time a stray dog followed her home, and we kept the dog overnight, with my mother walking it back to its neighborhood the next day. When it was time for Janine to do her student teaching, instead of interning at the local public high school where her children were studying, she practiced in the South Windsor, Connecticut school system where my father was teaching. This was a sacrifice for her because she would have loved to have taught in the Springfield school district, but her daughter met the prospect of having mom teach in her school intolerable. So Janine sacrificed her plan and completed her student teaching in South Windsor, which proved to be fortuitous since it was such a good school system. Speaking of sacrifice, when a wife and mother takes on the task of furthering her education, the whole family is affected. Husband and wife alone, times are always accompanied by a textbook or a writing assignment. Children learn to cook and have dinner ready for 6 o'clock because mom's late afternoon class takes precedence. But somehow, amidst all the hustle, mom managed to arrange for our music lessons and attend all of our school and sports events. Our friends were always welcome to our home because mom enjoyed their company and loved having us all around. Janine finally graduated from AIC with a major in English and a minor in French when her children were finishing high school. She graduated summa cum laude and with the highest GPA in her class. Our voices were the loudest cheering her on from the sidelines. Janine went on to get her master's degree in education from AIC and had a successful career teaching both English and French to the lucky high school students of South Windsor. My mother set a wonderful example for her children. My brother graduated with a 4-year degree in nursing directly after high school and completed 2 master's degrees during his early work years, while I obtained my associate's degree before setting out on my own path. Like Mom, I did not finish my bachelor's degree until I was close to 50, fulfilling my own dream. I know that I was inspired to keep on going, especially when things were tough, by hearing my mother's reply to friends who would say to her as she marched ahead on the long road to her career, "Do you know how old you're going to be when you graduate?" Janine would reply, "In 1979, I'm going to turn 40, with or without a degree, so I'll have the degree and then I'll be able to teach." Good answer. Mom has a wonderful outlook on life that continues to this day. I rely on her wisdom and loving guidance every time I seek it. And so for the next 20 years, Janine Gorman taught 8th, 9th, 10th, and 12th grade English literature, grammar, and writing, along with rudiments of the French language and culture. Along the way, she pursued a fellowship with the National and Connecticut Writing Projects, led students on field trips for several years to the French-speaking province of Quebec, on several tours of areas of France and England in order to expand students' appreciation of other cultures, and served as an adjunct professor of English at American International College. If you ask Janine what the best part of teaching is, she would tell you learning. Good answer also. Janine is a lifelong learner who experiences the greatest fulfillment in being taught by her students. Carol, who was blind and learned by listening and typing notes into a braille machine. Early in the morning, long before class began, Carol would be memorizing her day's route, counting steps down corridors and up and down stairs. Ever-present white cane tapping left to right in front of her. As the class toured an art gallery, Carol would stand before a masterpiece being described by her teacher and shiver at the description of a moving sunset. "Do the colors make you feel hot or cold?" Carol might ask. Emily, who was profoundly deaf and had to read lips in order to understand the lesson. How humble she was in raising her hand and in a halting voice, asking questions in front of the class. How delightful the twin sophomore boys suffering from cerebral palsy, wheeling into the class full of smiles and brotherly devilry. Boys and girls, young men and women, bursting with energy and curiosity, full of life, and for the most part willing to do whatever to get a decent grade in Mrs. G's class. This is but a snapshot of a day in the life of a teacher and her students. Questions, discussions, critical thinking, group work, presentations, poems, novels, stories, song lyrics, connections, conclusions, opinions, life. It took 20 years for the classroom journey to start and 20 more for the classroom journey to end. What a ride. What a wonderful ride on which does not end ever. Here at Southport Square, we teach and learn every day from each other. How fortunate we are to have such a ride and diverse community of residents who share knowledge and experiences every day. Thoreau wrote, "The end of life is education." That goal is being met here in spades. Janine Gorman. Candidate Ann Harrington, Dr. Lockie. Ann, you want to stand up and wave hi? Absolutely. Yes, thank you. Ann Lockie was born in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania in 1939 and lived in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. Her father was a country doctor who practiced medicine 6 days a week and made house calls. From the time she was little, he would always ask her what she wanted to be when she grew up, and she would always say, "A doctor," because she knew that is what he wanted her to say. She graduated from high school in 1956 and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Mount Holyoke College in South Hadley, Massachusetts from 1956 to 1960. In 1961, she went to Temple Medical School in Philadelphia, the same medical school that her father had graduated from. Medical school was not as difficult as she had anticipated. However, she did have difficulty in one subject, which was physiology. Her one saving grace was the fact that the chairman of the physiology department was her father's roommate throughout medical school. That helps, huh? Out of 120 students in her medical school class, there were 20 women. They were all very close, and she never found that she was treated differently during the years that she was in medical school. She was inducted into the Babcock Honor Society in her junior year. After graduating from Temple Medical School in 1965, she did a rotating internship at Bryn Mawr Hospital in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. After obtaining her medical license, she married a classmate and moved to Michigan, where she worked at Park Davis Pharmaceutical Company. While in Michigan, she had 2 boys. She moved to Tampa, Florida in 1972. After a divorce, she entered a general psychiatry residency and subsequently a child and adolescent fellowship at the University of South Florida College of Medicine from 1978 to 1982. During her residency, she was awarded the Hobbs Borgard Award for Outstanding Resident. After becoming board certified in general psychiatry and child and adolescent psychiatry, she became a clinical associate professor at the University of South Florida. After finishing her fellowship, she went into private practice and also mentored child psychiatry fellows from USF. In addition, at that time, she spent part of her time consulting with special education classes in Hillsborough County and Tampa. This included setting up treatment plans for learning disabled, ADHD, and other behavioral disorders of children. After a few years, she went into private practice exclusively. During this time, she treated many children and would frequently go to the children's school to confer with the teachers and guidance counselors. She would occasionally prescribe medications for children, but only as a last resort, since many times family therapy and behavioral modification techniques would suffice. In 1986, she met her future husband, John Harrington, an engineer on a sailboat at a single sailing club in St. Petersburg. They were on separate boats, and her boat had water balloons. That sounds like a fun boat. Her boat had water balloons. She got his attention by hitting him with a water balloon, and later that evening they got together to dance at the marina where the boats were docked. They were married 2 years later in 1988. Much of their married life has been spent on sailboats traveling to the Keys, the Bahamas, Cuba, and more. She really loved practicing child psychiatry and hopes that many more physicians will go into it. Since gun deaths are now the leading cause of death in children, there is a great need for mental health workers to help children who are becoming fearful of going to school. Moms Demand Action is a nonpartisan grassroots organization that is trying to find solutions to this terrible problem. Mothers have frequently been heard to say that they dread dropping their children off at school because they fear they may never see them again. This fear is unfortunately being conveyed to their children. Children in our country deserve to go to school and feel safe. Ann Harrington, Dr. Lockie. All right, our next woman of impact, Diane Kimball. For her entire life and career, Diane has always tried to make life better for others. From reading the Cherry Ames book as a preteen, she knew she wanted to be a nurse. She graduated as a chef from the CIA, in 1964, but the only job she was offered in any restaurant in New Haven and surrounding areas was as a dishwasher. Yeah, there were no female chefs in those days, and they were not wanted in the male-dominated kitchens. So she enrolled in Quinnipiac University and went to classes at night after working all day and doing homework on weekends. She graduated from Quinnipiac University in 1971 with a degree in health sciences, minors in nursing and respiratory therapy. She immediately went to work at several Connecticut hospitals, finishing up at Danbury Hospital before moving to San Francisco in 1980. She took a job at Alta Bates Herrick Hospitals in Berkeley, rising to Assistant Director of Respiratory Care, then moving on to the University of California, San Francisco as Night Shift Operations Manager, responsible for 11 different ICU units. She described the job as a fireman, running all over the Moffitt Long hospitals, putting out fires and problem solving. This is where she found her true passion in HIV/AIDS research, education, and prevention. She was inducted into the Order of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, an HIV prevention group in San Francisco, and created her alter ego, Sister Maria Teresa Spermatozoa. Spermatozoa? Spermatozoa, all right. Who marched in parades and rode on floats in gay pride celebrations, spreading the word about prevention. She left San Francisco at the end of 1992 and moved to Montana, where she continued her work in HIV/AIDS treatments at the Butte Health Department. She also headed up the Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Program, developed the Women's Breast and Cervical Health Program, served as information officer on health issues, and conducted food service safety classes. In 1997, she received the Montana Governor's Award for HIV/AIDS services for her work in bringing services to Butte. She said at the time her greatest reward was seeing the longevity and healthy lives people with HIV were now living. After serving for 7 years on the board of directors of the American Association for Respiratory Care, in 1999 she was elected president of the 50,000 member organization in a nationwide election. She served with honor, establishing a mentorship program for future leaders and traveling the country, visiting state affiliates and lecturing on a variety of topics. While doing this, she traveled the world, visiting all 7 continents in 126 countries, and she is still traveling to this day. Then it was back home to Montana and a career change. Diane has been very involved in her local church, the United Church of Christ in Butte. She served several terms as moderator as well as heading search committees for new pastors. She enrolled in the Lay Ministry Institute and spent several years training to become a licensed pastor in the United Church of Christ. She served 2 churches in Butte, the UCC and the Disciples of Christ Church. She skillfully took the members of the DOC through their decision to close the church. At the same time, she was planning her move to Florida, only because she wanted to be warm again. I think that's why we're all here, by the way, right? Yeah, we all want to be warm. Her volunteer work continues today as a floor leader and member of resident council, library volunteer, renovation committee member, and EAP member, as well as a volunteer at the Animal Welfare League and Mom Hugs, Inc. And she's very happy to be warm. Diane Kimball. Nancy Lewis was a woman born with a spirit of adventure. Her father worked for Radio Munich in Germany, which was an arm of the CIA responsible for broadcasting to countries where the free press was banned. As a result, her family of 5, including her 2 brothers, moved to various exotic and unusual places, providing Nancy with a unique childhood experience. After graduating from high school in Bangkok, Thailand, Nancy took a year off in 1944 to travel the world alone and find herself. Despite traveling alone, she was rarely afraid, demonstrating bravery beyond her years. Nancy eventually settled at the University of Virginia, where she earned a degree in political science. It was there that she met her future husband, and together they played a crucial role in the creation of Florida International University. At the time, it was the 3rd largest public university in Florida, and it remains the 8th largest public university in the United States, with its campus located in Miami. Nancy and her husband, who is the dean, hired staff and developed the university's curriculum. Once she settled into married life, Nancy raised her 3 stepchildren. Despite her domestic responsibilities, Nancy also became the only female representative for Georgia Pacific in the field. It is impressive to think that she was able to handle heavy shingle samples and other building supplies in her line of work. I've lifted those shingle samples. They're quite heavy. So, later, Nancy and her husband followed her parents to Punta Gorda, where they retired and purchased one of 3 homes in Punta Gorda Isles. They also joined the Twin Isles Country Club in 1980. When asked about her favorite memory, Nancy fondly recalled a piece of advice given to her by her father. While traveling, he reminded her that as Americans, she and her family represented the United States, and it was important to behave in a way that communicated this to those around them. It's remarkable how a simple remark from a parent or grandparent can stay with us for such a long time. It serves as a reminder that we should all strive to create lasting memories for those we love. This inspirational story provides a brief but informative glimpse into the life of Nancy Lewis, highlighting her adventurous spirit and significant contributions to the development of Florida International University. Nancy Lewis. Anna was born in Mexico City, and after high school, she enrolled in a course to become a bilingual secretary. Her goal was to work in the medical field, like her father, who was a doctor. However, her father unexpectedly passed away while she was still young, leaving her to find a job to support herself. Anna worked for 2 years in the statistics department of 2 major Mexican airlines, but she had a strong desire to travel. She then decided to work for the Department of Tourism in the Mexican government. In just 1 month, she managed to secure a position as a foreign travel advisor for Mexico and worked for 2 years at Rockefeller Center in New York. Anna also worked for a Mexican bank as their representative and later worked as a translator and secretary for a consultant of Mexico. Afterwards, she got married to her first husband. Despite the difficulties, her marriage lasted for 19 years. She does treasure her 3 sons and the beautiful kimono she wore as a bride in the Buddhist temple. Although she could not become a doctor like her father, she worked hard and became a medical assistant. She then worked for Catholic charities and group homes for people with Down syndrome. She developed recreational programs and mentored 2 residents individually to improve their lifestyle. She worked for a private practice and later seized the opportunity to work for a hospital in the ER, ICU, and cardiac unit. In 2002, she met her soulmate, Jim. They got married and then moved to Florida in 2012. She volunteered for St. Vincent de Paul for 4 years to assist people in need, home visits, interviews, etc. During this time, she took a homeless person under her wing and helped them turn their life around. It was fulfilling to provide support to those individuals during their struggles. However, being a woman during this journey posed its own set of challenges. Overall, Anna's life took her on various career paths, from working in the airline industry to becoming a foreign travel advisor, bank representative, and medical assistant. Despite the challenges she faced after her father's passing, Anna persevered and found success and fulfillment in her work, ultimately making a positive impact on the lives of those around her. Anna Masuda. Before I start, let me quote an old Irish proverb. People who are happiest in life don't have the best of everything. They make the best of everything they have. Yes, absolutely. Kay was the middle child of 7 siblings, but is now the oldest one left. She excelled in school, being chosen to represent her grade school in spelling bees and quizzes as a way of honor. Let me go back and read this one again. I'm going to start over. She excelled in school, being chosen to represent her grade school in spelling bees and quizzes was an honor she cherished. She graduated high school as a member of the National Honor Society. Kay attended Cambria Row Business School. Her job was with an architectural firm employed by all men, with her as the office manager. She worked on all the specifications, blueprints, and dealt with contractors, a woman ahead of her time. 2 years after their marriage, when she was 7 months pregnant, Jack was transferred, which was now the beginning of her relocation motion. She enjoyed all the moves and became quite proficient in packing and unpacking. Meeting new people and experiencing new environments was her new lifestyle. Being an executive's wife gave her privileges. They became part of the towns that were now their new homes. Working in hospitals, hospital cafeterias, participating on the boards of the YMCA, United Way, and president of different women's organizations in her new hometowns helped them to become an integral part of the communities. They loved to golf and housed amateur golfers from other countries. Very interesting. Kay even became queen mom of their country club. After living in 4 different states, their son and daughter were now both in college. They found their permanent home. This gave Kay the opportunity to refocus her life back to herself. She was hired as an office manager at the university in Valparaiso, Indiana. Having never gone to a university, finally at 48 years old, she enrolled as a college student. Unfortunately, the man above had different plans. Her husband had to have open heart surgery involving 5 arteries. They decided to enjoy whatever time was left and retired to Florida. This move gave her the opportunity to do something she really enjoyed, writing poetry for family members. She and her husband became a team. She wrote the poems, he created the cards. They called their family card business Moonbeam Inc. Eventually, she felt the need to get involved in something more constructive, and Edison Community College was looking for an office manager. She applied and got the job. Her experience from Valparaiso University was the key. It was a job she really enjoyed. Her need to be involved in her community led her to the Punta Gorda Police Department, this time as a volunteer. It was interesting work and showed her the side of law enforcement that we don't always see. She could still play golf and mahjong, but felt like she was contributing to her new community. She volunteered there for 18 years. She stopped when she moved to Southport Square, where she is leading an active, engaging lifestyle. Kay is a cool grandma who is very involved with her grandkids. They have done skiing, zip lining, tree climbing, I-fly, sledding, as well as adventures on Big Bertha and kayaking. Their life of moving ingrained a sense of getting involved to feel part of the community. This is why she is so involved at Southport Square. Kay's zest for life and bubbly personality, combined with her desire to be an active member of her community, has led her to where she is today. You can find Kay in the mornings on the pickleball court or riding her bike. Kay is an integral part of the Southport Square community life, and we truly appreciate her and her contributions. Kay Mooney. Linda was born in Baltimore, Maryland, and spent her childhood in Cantonsville, where she studied piano and dance. She graduated from Oberlin College in Ohio, receiving a Bachelor of Music degree in piano performance, and taught piano from the time she was 16 until 2016. When she was 35, she had the opportunity to teach ballet to 3 to 6-year-olds at the St. Charles Park District in Illinois, which lasted 20 years. Her classes grew from 4 to 20, and she created recitals based on fairy tales, introducing her students to classical music and Disney tunes and higher levels of dance. She always felt that acquainting children with music and dance was her most rewarding occupation. 4-year-olds began to recognize Tchaikovsky's music. Many of her students now teach and perform, spreading the love of the arts to a new generation. One of the highlights at Oberlin for Linda and her husband Rich was getting to play at Carnegie Hall with the Oberlin Orchestra. At Oberlin, she also learned to tune pianos and added this to her occupation. She was surprised when Eastern Michigan University asked her to tune for Santana, Peter Frampton, Muddy Waters and Seals, and Croft. Plus, she tuned for Reba McEntire and Charlie Pride at an Illinois county fair. After moving to Florida, that's important, right? Because that makes them play better, play right? I mean, it's important to make sure the piano is tuned. After moving to Florida in 2003, Linda developed other interests. Her daughter, Christy, inspired her love of photography. She and Christy have a greeting card website where they sell their cards and sell them at art fairs along with jewelry and other handmade crafts. I think maybe you and Kay can get together and do some of those cards better, right? Linda is a member of the Northport Art Center and has won countless ribbons. Her photographs of Florida have been published in Nature and Chamber of Commerce magazines and numerous calendars. Photo opportunities come from being a master naturalist and a member of Peace River Audubon, where she loves doing Christmas bird count locally and in the Everglades. Piano and music are still important in Linda's life, and she has performed with a 2-piano group for 14 years, mostly at the Cultural Center, and now in the First Presbyterian Church at Punta Gorda's concert series. She also sings and performs with the Charlotte Chorale. She was happy to donate her Kawai grand piano, Kawai, I'm learning all kinds of new words today, Kawai grand piano to our town hall here at Southport Square. It's a beautiful piano I just saw today. Linda feels her biggest contribution today is being a permit holder with Coastal Wildlife, monitoring sea turtles on Manasota Key for the past 12 years. She and her husband wrote a book to show people exactly what the turtle patrollers do, and a flip book to show interested people on the beach exactly what we are doing and why. Keeping track of sea turtle nests and hatchlings for the state of Florida and educating the public about how to protect these turtles is such a rewarding time spent. Linda loves living at Southport Square along with her husband Rich and continues to introduce concert series at Southport for the residents. Linda found her passion for music, which she later shared with countless students through her teaching career. Her dedication to teaching and introducing children to classical music and dance has left a lasting impact on her students, many of whom now carry on her legacy by teaching and performing. Linda's love for the arts has inspired so many and has helped to cultivate a new generation of artists and musicians. Playing at Carnegie Hall with the Oberlin Orchestra was one of Linda's many highlights, and it is a testament to her skill and dedication as a musician. Linda's contributions to the world of music and dance will always be remembered and appreciated, and her legacy will continue to inspire for generations to come. Linda Moreau. Next up, Annette Morden, and of course in style with her cool sunglasses. Annette always has a different, unique pair of sunglasses on. If you ever notice that, you will see Annette with different sunglasses periodically. So Annette's biography, the developmental years. Annette was born in Phoenix, Arizona, March 17, 1940. The weather was too hot, so the family moved to Sioux City, Iowa. Annette's mother worked as a comptometer operator, her father as an air traffic controller. Because of his job, they moved many times. By the time that Annette had reached middle school, she had attended seven different schools, 4 of them in 2nd grade. Wow. During 2nd grade, her father died. Her mother had a nervous breakdown, so she stayed with several relatives. This time was stressful. An example of the non-integrated learning, she had learned cursive writing only to change schools to relearn printing. Expected to know music theory, having never been taught the theory concepts. In 3rd grade, Mrs. Yeeman took her under her wing after her father died. She stayed with different relatives for several years. On the more positive side, Annette met Jane Stevenson in 5th grade and soon after met Diane Bushyeager in 6th grade during a marble playground playoff. Sounds intense. Annette was elected to be the school's marble queen, and other players serenaded her with song. Annette's mother continued to work with a low salary and limited the freedom most junior high school students experience and wasn't home very much. She was lonesome most of the time. This impressed on her the importance of having friends. Even growing up poor, her mother provided her with opportunities such as symphonies, and other free experiences. Diane Bushyeager's dad taught at Morningside College, so she and Diane attended many college functions. She was able to buy a flute that allowed Annette her musical experiences. In high school, she participated in sports. During the hot summer days in Sioux City, Iowa, she lifeguarded and taught swimming so she could spend time in the cool pool. She played intramural softball, and when playing the female Marines, learned a whole new vocabulary, more than her mother would allow her to use. She also enjoyed soccer, tennis, basketball, and softball. She was a member of student council and played in the orchestra. The highlight was when her band was invited to be the feature band at the Chicagoland Music Festival. Patty Page and Roger and Hammerstein were also featured at this festival. She attended Morningside Lutheran, where she was a member of Luther League and attended confirmation. After graduating from high school in 1958, Annette attended Morningside College for 2 years so she could be there to support her mother. During this time, she was a member of student council and the college orchestra for a limited time. In orchestra, the music majors occupied the top chairs. Annette insisted that all should be refereed challenges to occupy the top seats. They wouldn't consider this, and Annette viewed this as unfair, so she quit. After 2 years, she transferred to the University of Northern Iowa with a mathematics major and a minor in biology. While she was there, her roommate was her lifelong friend, Jane Stevenson. She met friends in Tri Beta, an honorary biological society. Annette worked hard earning money for her education. Much of it was from 50 cents at a pharmacy to 75 cents per hour performing statistics at the teacher training school on campus. The summers off, she, Jane, and Diane taught camping skills at Camp Hoffman in Rhode Island. Annette was waterfront staff. During her senior year, Annette met Bob Morden, resulting in her grade point decreasing because too much time with Bob and not enough time with calculus. You brought her down, Bob. I'm telling you, she was doing so well. They dated for a few months and then he proposed. After graduating, they spent the summer in Sioux City working for the city's recreation program. At the director tryouts, she hit a home run over the wall, and so she ended up being the softball coach for the playground. She said it was a lucky hit. Her team kept winning, so she had to keep cleaning her nails prior to her wedding August 5th. She also remembers tripping on her wedding dress as they returned down the aisle to the receiving line. Bob said he was in a hurry to get back. After the ceremony, she headed north to one of the Minnesota lakes for the honeymoon. She woke up the following morning to the news that Marilyn Monroe had killed herself. Bob was no longer available, so we chose to continue. The giving back to society years. Her first teaching position was in Rockford, Illinois. Rockford was a tough town with the highest rate of juvenile delinquency of any city of that size in the nation. She taught some of the lowest groups of students, yet she always maintained control over her classroom. She developed the students' confidence, where they would even tell her where the next rumble would be for the weekend. A student one time blocked the door as she was leaving the building after school. After asking the student politely to step aside several times, she kicked him in the shin and barged right through, even though he was the city's champion Golden Gloves boxer. He was kicked out of school. Even though she maintained the highest standard of conduct, she presented her material in a compassionate manner. She was liked by almost all of her students. After 3 years, Annette returned to the University of Northern Iowa to work on her master's degree in guidance and counseling and education. After graduating, she worked at Carle Clinic as a ward clerk while she raised her daughter, Christina, while her husband worked on his doctorate at the University of Illinois. Upon graduating, the job market took her to Superior, Wisconsin. Many opportunities opened up for her during her first years. She joined the University Wives and the League of Women Voters. She was a Girl Scout leader for a large troop and provided many valuable experiences for them. During this time, she became aware that there was a housing shortage in Superior and organized and formed the first Habitat for Humanity and directed this housing project for Superior. No, she didn't meet Jimmy Carter during this time. In the early 70s, she became a scientist working on the benthic organisms in Lake Superior. Benthic organisms, is that correct? All right. In Lake Superior harbors, developing an environmental impact statement for the Environmental Protection Agency. During this time, her skills and personality was recognized and joined another contract with the Special Services Department of the university. During the following years, she developed a highly successful math laboratory for incoming students to develop their skills to be able to complete the math requirements of the university. This laboratory grew from a few students utilizing this service to lines forming out the door into the hallway. Her math classes had a waiting list to get in, and she was always available for advisement and tutoring. Sorry, not advertisement, that wouldn't work, right? Advisement and tutoring. The first indicator of her success and popularity was when she was recognized by the Albert Nesson Marquis Who's Who Among America's Teachers. This organization polls high-ability students who are listed in the Chancellor's List publications that honor our nation's top high school, college, and graduate students to honor the teachers who have most significantly impacted their lives. To be recognized once is an honor, but Annette was nominated to Marquee Who's Who Among American Teachers 6 times. Very few receive this honor at the university level, especially in math. She has also been recognized by the university for her teaching and advisement skills. She provided hundreds of hours of unpaid tutoring for students working on their college degrees. She hosted many social student activities in her large home and even opened her home to parents who traveled to see their children during graduation in the spring. To help her reach all students during this time, she became fluent in Spanish. Her husband joined her during her schooling in Mexico and enjoyed the traveling opportunities during this time. Annette continued with her community outreach by organizing blood drives for the churches of Superior. She was a member of Zion Lutheran Church. During this time, she taught Bible school and confirmation classes, was the chairman of the church board, and sat on the sit-in committee that reviewed the candidacy for ordination to the ministry. As her children grew, she supported their activities by being a leader for a Y teen group for 1 year and being a member of the executive board of the directors of the YWCA. Assessing Annette's contributions, the Marquee's Who's Who wrote the following. The following is an elite list of the top 3% of the professionals who have excelled in their fields. Our process involves many factors, including an assessment of a professional's years of service and unique contributions. This, combined with a comprehensive interview of the professional, individuals who have demonstrated longevity, leadership, and prominence in their field are eligible for the following honors. Annette was nominated to Marquee Who's Who of American Educators for 2006 and 2007, and Annette was nominated to Marquee Who's Who of American Women 2006 and 2007. Marquee states in its preface that Who's Who in America endeavors to profile the leaders of American society, those men and women who are influencing their nation's development, individuals who have demonstrated longevity, leadership, and prominence during their careers. Annette was nominated to Marquee Who's Who in America for 2006, 2007, and 2009. Annette Morden. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I've got a little bit more. I apologize. I'm going through the last of the who's who here, but the traveling years, there's more to Annette. Annette and her husband always enjoyed traveling. After marriage, Annette saved her salary and used her husband's to live on. They traveled all summer living on her salary. Our first trip was traveling all around the United States and Canada in a VW bug and camping in a tent. We traveled 25,000 miles visiting 46 states and many Canadian provinces. The next year, she and her husband traveled 23,000 miles around Europe, visiting 23 countries. Annette now has visited all the 50 states and 35 countries. The early years with our kids, we visited a family ranch in the spring and traveled in the states during August. When the kids graduated, Annette visited all the countries in Central America and most of the states in Mexico. Annette and her husband's favorite country was Costa Rica and visited there several times, visiting paradise beaches and tropical destinations. After retirement, she went on 14 cruises with friends and family in the Mediterranean, the Gulf, and the Caribbean Sea. The retirement years. For 13 years, Annette spent the winters in Florida. In 2002, she and her husband purchased a double-wide home in Alligator Park. This park had the reputation of being the friendliest park in Florida, although that's a little bit contradictory, Alligator Park being the friendliest. But hey, it is the friendliest park in Florida. It truly lived up to its reputation, and each year was enjoyed to the fullest. It was a life filled with skits, music, travel, entertainment, food, and camaraderie. There was always someplace to be with fun at 5 o'clock. It was a perfect retirement. Annette suffered a major stroke in 2018. For every bad thing that happened at that time, a good thing also happened. She lost some function to her left side and damage to the hippocampus, but kept her from putting some events in proper order. So time is a little problem for her. But the most amazing outcome was that her memory was not touched, and she has an excellent recall of her past. During this time, pain was a major concern, and she has managed with all this positive attitude and outlook. She would like people to remember her as being kind and funny. You can test her on this by asking her if she knows a joke or a story. Annette Morden. I should call Annette up next time I need a drink. Get a story out of her, a joke. All right, our next woman of impact, Fern Newhart. The first 23 years of her life were spent in Chicago. She lived about 2 miles west of Wrigley Baseball Field, with bus access to the planetarium, historical museum, and art institute, which all had free access. Riverview Park was even closer, with wood roller coasters and other rides. About 5 miles north, she could ride her bike to the forest preserve. After a hike, she would return, and her bike was still there for the ride home. That's impressive in Chicago, right? During most of this time, she was very involved in music. Started playing the accordion at 5 and moved on to the clarinet and bass clarinet in high school. She graduated from Roosevelt University, a city university between her first and second children. She moved to Columbus, Ohio, where she lived for 44 years. Once the boys were in school, she began working for a local CPA firm. During the second year, she went through life changes following a divorce, and then the realization that she did not care about accounting. It's hard to do when you're a CPA, right? An adjunct professor at The Ohio State University recommended her for a tax position at Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company. There she found her calling. Understanding accounting and melding it with federal and state income tax laws was a challenge she enjoyed. Working her way through compliance, audit, and planning, and designing systems which did not exist back then. She also attained her CPA, Master's in Federal Tax Law, and Chartered Financial Planner designation. During this time, she and her second husband traveled extensively. They traveled the UK, Western Europe, and several Eastern European countries, Japan, China, Aleutian Islands, Caribbean, Panama Canal, South America, Mexico, Canada, and of course, most of the US. After 30 plus years at Nationwide, she retired. She and her husband spent time restoring 50s and 60s era Chevrolets, went to fly-ins in Wisconsin where they collected World War II signed airplane prints and attended many toy train meets. Following his death, her sister and brother-in-law generously invited her to move to Florida, where they had been living the last 15 plus years. She sold everything, packed up the Traverse, including the cat, and was on her way. They had a great time, which included more travel to the countries surrounding the Baltic Sea, Ireland, Scotland, Iceland, Greenland, Newfoundland, and Labrador. Took classes with Lifelong Learning Institute in Punta Gorda and rode with Kingfisher Cruises. That sounds like fun. After 4 years and the realization that she would need a new hip, she began looking into living arrangements for herself and senior accommodation. After touring Southport Square, she knew she was home. She has been able to travel to take part in activities and knows that there is support for her physical challenges. Fern exercises every morning and doesn't allow anything to stop her. She is a true inspiration to many. Now, as Fern sits and reflects on her life, she feels grateful for all of the experiences and opportunities that she had. From the bustling city streets of Chicago to the quiet forests of Ohio, and from the world of accounting to the world of music and travel, her journey has been full of twists and turns. But through it all, she has found joy and fulfillment in the people and experiences that have shaped her life, and she looks forward to whatever adventures may come next. Fern Newhart. All right, next we have Louise Rea. Louise, you want to say hello? Louise next, and then we'll do Lily later. I got Lily, I've got you, I think you're toward the end, Lily. So we're going to start with Louise. All right. Louise's life began when she was born on March 11, 1938, in the front bedroom of a brick farmhouse in rural Ontario, Canada, with only a midwife present. There was no indoor plumbing except for a hand pump at the kitchen sink and no central heating. Canada was already active in the Second World War. Electricity was starting to come to the area. Living on a farm provided lots of fresh food with milk coming from the family's herd and fruits and vegetables from the large garden. She started school at 5 after the Christmas holiday in a one-room school with one teacher teaching all eight grades and passed into grade 2 in June. At age 10, the family moved from the farm to a community of about 100 people where they owned the general store and the post office for the area. The home was attached to the store. It was located on the shores of Lake Erie where commercial fishing and farming was done. The store sold everything including food, hardware products, over-the-counter medications, cigarettes, fabrics, shotgun bullets, gasoline, and was the center for local gossip. Next door was the United Church. Early on, Louise was involved with the activities there, including teaching Sunday school, being in the choir, baking for bake sales, and serving at church suppers in the fall. Participating in Laurel 4-H clubs was available. She rode a yellow school bus for 5 years about 15 miles away to attend high school. While there, she played in a 5-person school band, played in intramural sports, and held a position on the student council. At the end of 5 years, you had to take provincial exams written and marked by people you never knew in order to qualify for getting into university. Home economics was a favorite subject in high school, and she did well, especially in math and science courses. So it was no surprise she enrolled in the 4-year degree science course in home economics, majoring in nutrition. The first summer was spent waitressing at a family resort on a beautiful lake in northern Ontario, and then also demonstrating the use of Campbell's soups and a cooking booth sponsored by the company at a large national exhibition in Toronto during the last 3 weeks of the summer. Taking food and nutrition at college pointed Louise toward becoming a hospital dietitian. This was accomplished by apprenticing at 2 different large Toronto hospitals, for 3 summers and 4 months following graduation. Her first job after being qualified as a registered dietitian was at a veterans hospital in London, Ontario, in a building designated for psychiatric patients who had returned after the Second World War. Next, Louise returned to Toronto to take a job as a home economist for Ontario Hydro, which is like FPL. The job was to promote greater use of electricity appliances by traveling to rural areas of Ontario and presenting cooking demonstrations to farm wives using such appliances as electric frying pans, carving knives, blenders, juicers, crock pots, and toaster ovens. I just assumed those were always available. This also included doing a series of TV demonstrations weekly from a northern TV station. In the middle 60s, Louise changed careers again after a few weeks at Teachers College to become a high school economics teacher at a vocational school built specifically to equip students for the real world who wouldn't go to college or become teachers or nurses. Many of these students were from low-income families. This involved planning nutritious family meals, grocery shopping, budgeting, preparing the food, setting a table for the family, sewing clothes for themselves, child care, how to do laundry, how to bathe a baby, and even how to make a bed properly. During the 7 years, Louise got married and only stopped teaching when she got pregnant with her first child. After her second son arrived, finances were getting tight, so she went back to teaching food part-time at a high school, where she could walk to the high school. That lasted only 1 year because the enrollment went down for that school. Louise managed to land a full-time teaching position at a neighboring middle school, teaching clothing and sewing. It was a good thing because that summer she found herself becoming a single mother of 2 sons under the age of 4. She scrambled to arrange a half day at a preschool for the older one and a babysitter in the apartment where the 3 of them were living in. Then along came her knight in shining armor. Louise and her 2 boys moved out of the city the next summer when they got married and became the Brady Bunch, as he had custody of his 3 children. The kids were 4, 5, 6, and 11 and 12 at that time. All of them were in the public school where they walked to, coming home for lunch, as did her husband. They had 3 family meals together every day. Unheard of today, and that is very true. 3 meals a day together as a family. Soon after, one of the mortgages of the family home had interest at 17%. Guess what? It was time for Louise to go back to work teaching part-time at the local high school where the 2 older boys were attending. The job entailed teaching girls who were considered slow learners. The school board insisted on Louise taking the course to get credited in special education, which entailed taking night classes about 15 miles away. It took 2 years of classes to get that accomplished. It was a busy time with each kid taking a club, a sport, a music lesson, and no one old enough to get a driver's license yet. Luckily, the town was rather small, and some places the kids could ride their bikes to. The whole family attended church. The clubs and kids participated in how and often were at the church. Her husband was on the church board, Louise was on the missions committee, and she was also treasurer for the used clothing depot, which held sales monthly on Saturday in the church basement. Louise enjoyed meeting with other women at the local university women's club. The club held a used book sale yearly to raise funds to give local girls scholarships for university. Time passed about 10 years when the 2 older boys were now in university. Louise's husband was offered a promotion with his company, which involved moving to a head office in Kalamazoo, Michigan. January 1997, the Rea family moved to Portage, Michigan, where the 3 younger children were enrolled in the local high school. Louise called herself a kept woman because she never got a paying job after leaving Canada. She had for several years been extremely busy, but it wasn't long after moving before she got herself involved with volunteering in several groups. She met so many interesting people and became acquainted with the city. There was the Symphony League, which had fashion shows and house tours to raise funds for the orchestra, the Art League, which had great speakers and took trips to art museums in places like Chicago, the Borges Service League, which ran a large gift shop in one of the biggest hospitals in Kalamazoo and had fancy balls to raise money for the hospital, and the Portage Newcomers Club, which had women from many parts of the world participating in different activities. As always, the church became a big component wherever the Rea family lived. One duty that Louise helped with was making sure the coffee was ready to be served during the conversation period after services. For 10 years, Louise sold high-end clothes in her home sent from a North Carolina company each season of the year. Her clients were mostly the women she met through the various clubs volunteering. The commissions she received seemed to find their way back to the company because of her own purchases. It satisfied her addiction for liking to have a good-looking wardrobe to wear to all the activities she was volunteering in. While in Kalamazoo, the Reyes bought a boat to enjoy Lake Michigan. They joined the United States Power Squadron, now called America's Boating Club, to take lessons to learn how to run it safely on Lake Michigan. They took all 13 classes that were offered, including celestial navigation. The last 32 years, they have been volunteering locally, district-wise, and nationally with that organization promoting safe boating. The love of boating brought the Reyes to Port Punta Gorda 20 years ago, when they have continued to give back to the community by collecting donations from neighbors for the American Heart Association, being former members of the Cruising Club of Punta Gorda Isles, being former members of the Charlotte Harbor Yacht Club, and active members of the New Life Church. Louise has worked with the ladies group organizing Games Day, Christmas cookie sales, making cookies to give as treats to such groups as the firemen, the public school teachers, and the policemen, and making sandwiches on a regular basis to be taken out into the woods to feed the homeless. The last 2 years have given Louise an opportunity to give back to her new community, Southport Square. People are so interesting, so being on the ambassadors team gives her the chance to participate or to perhaps influence prospective clients to join this community. Serving people, and especially serving people food, enticed Louise to join the monthly pancake breakfast crew. Louise is not a reader of books, but does enjoy getting out of her apartment, trying new activities with others, making new friends, and being helpful to others. This has given her much satisfaction throughout her lifetime, and she wants it to continue as long as possible. Louise Rea. All right, our next woman of impact, Bridget Regan. Bridget was born in Ireland into a poor family, one of 8 daughters, and was brought to the U.S. when she was 9 years old, along with a few of her other sisters. Her mom and the 2 youngest sisters came to the U.S. approximately 4 years later, but not her dad. He did not want to leave the old country, even though he had an opportunity. Hard to understand, but we had to move on. They were raised by our Aunt Sarah and their mom, who worked together to help the family. Starting over in America, a new world to them, was challenging, but challenges can be rewarding. Even at age 9, if one has the will to focus on succeeding one day at a time. It was difficult starting over in a new school in the big city of Manhattan, New York, with its towering buildings, none of which she had ever experienced before. They were introduced to music and singing, although they had it in their bones already, and Aunt Sarah sent them for voice and piano lessons. Some of them did good with the piano and others with the voice. Her aunt's dream was that they would become the 7 Regan sisters, just like the 7 Lennon sisters. But that never did materialize. However, her love for singing did not end there. She performed at Irish festivals throughout the years and had an opportunity to sing at Little Carnegie Hall in New York City when she was 14 years old, and continued performing for weddings, funerals, and several other functions during those years. She was honored to perform at the World Trade Center at the windows of the World Restaurant in Manhattan, New York. While attending school, she got a part-time job modeling for the Montgomery Ward Company in Manhattan, a woman's clothing magazine, which was quite a lot of fun. She also became very interested in sewing and received an award for pattern design from the Singer Sewing Company in New York. At age 17, just before graduating from high school, she met her former husband, and they dated for some time and got married at 21. He was 24. We're going to pause for a picture real quick. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Duty calls. Thank you so much for being here, Lynn. We appreciate it. Thank you. At age 17, just before graduating from high school, she met her former husband, and they dated for some time and got married at 21. He was 24. After 23 years of a very difficult marriage, she had no other choice but to leave. There were no children in the marriage. It is now 32 years later, and she is working on a book called The House on Rosedale Hill. If perhaps it gets published, it would be a great help for women or men that feel trapped in abusive relationships and not knowing which way to turn. After high school, she worked for the American Brands Company, SO Oil Company, and Union Carbide in New York City. At age 23, she started working for the headquarters of Texaco Inc., located in New York City, in the famous Chrysler building. That's a really cool building. And worked for them for 31 years, with Texaco for 31 years. During that time, she had the opportunity of working in various areas of the company, including the environmental health and safety section, which was very interesting, and the government relations area, wherein she had the opportunity of traveling for the company to Washington, D.C. on several occasions, and researching and preparing a briefing book for the CEO of the company for his speech in Washington, D.C. Then in 2001, there was a change of control, and Chevron took over Texaco. Just before the Texaco takeover just before the takeover, Texaco was in the process of preparing to celebrate 100 years as a company. She was asked to transfer to California, but she did not want to, so she opted out. After Texaco, she attended Empire State College in Hartsdale, New York, focusing on social services studies. During that time, she also started writing poetry and enjoyed having some of my poems published in the college magazine called The Tattler. Her favorite poem is called Finding Myself. She had an opportunity of counseling at the Westchester Council for Domestic Violence and Rape Victims. Not only was this a means of helping victims, but it was very rewarding for her to be able to help, and she was also able to get additional credits that were applied toward her studies. She worked for Haven Health Center in Greenwich, Connecticut, and this came about through a friend who was the administrator of the center. She enjoyed immensely working with the residents and was asked if she would like to pursue further study in therapeutic resident programming, which she did and got her degree. She attended Norwalk Community College in Connecticut, after work 3 nights a week to study psychology with a concentration in human development. The following year, she was promoted to Director of Resident Recreation Programs. She then worked at the facility for the next 4 years. In 2008, she was offered a job working as resident program manager at an adult daycare center called the River House. And yes, it was right on the river, with a beautiful waterfall right outside. It was an old water pump house that was converted into an adult daycare center. She decided to retire from her second career in 2012. Brian, her husband, was still working for the state of New York, and they decided to get a condo in Florida. Her sister Caroline has lived here in Punta Gorda for years, and they enjoyed it when they came to visit. They became snowbirds, and she would travel back and forth to fix up the condo. Brian, her husband, retired in 2016 after 31 years with the state of New York, and they moved permanently to Punta Gorda. They are now southern birds, no longer snowbirds, southern birds. In 2020, they sold their condo to her sister Caroline, and they arrived at Southport Square, where they are enjoying life. Now, here they are today at their earthly forever home. They are actively involved in the community and assist the sales and marketing in their efforts. Bridget is grateful to have been able to pursue her dreams and aspirations and to make a positive impact on society. Bridget Regan. All right, our next woman of impact is Pat Rose. Pat, there she is. Pat is originally from New York, but moved to Port Charlotte in 1997 after retiring from teaching. She attended State University of New York at Albany for her Bachelor of Science and Master in Business Administration and Masters in Business and Education. She taught high school for 5 years near Albany and 28 years on Long Island. There was a very good reason for her leaving Albany and relocating to Long Island. In 1968, she met Charlie in Saratoga Springs. He was an assistant horse trainer at Belmont Park, so they moved to Elmont after they were married. She really enjoyed teaching, and some of the subjects she taught included accounting, marketing, and law. She also supervised the work experience program for students who had part-time jobs after school. In association with several colleges, she taught courses where students received college credit. She continued taking classes at CW Post and Adelphi University and became a department chairman and director of occupational education. During her career, she was very active in the NYS Business Teachers Association and a representative for the State Education Department in implementing and instructing teachers on new courses and changes in existing programs. As a teacher, she had the opportunity to interact with both students and fellow teachers in a positive way. She tried to convey to her students that they could excel beyond the expectations. Some of her students followed in her footsteps to also become educators, and others went into the business world based on their success in various courses she taught. When she moved to Port Charlotte, she had time to explore lots of new interests and hobbies. She discovered the Cultural Center and started taking courses including line dancing, French, Lewis and Clark Expedition, etc. She also started traveling around the country and have been to all 50 states. She and Charlie also went to Mexico with a caravan of motorhomes and traveled to England, France, and South Africa. She continued to impact the community by volunteering at the Adult Education Center, teaching reading and math, and also at the Meals on Wheels thrift shop. As a member of the Charlotte County Retired Educators Association, she was actively involved in raising funds for the scholarships and interviewing and selecting the recipients of the scholarships. When she arrived at Southport Square, she had limited mobility, but has worked very hard at improving that. Very hard. I've seen it. She takes a variety of exercise classes offered and uses the machines available to constantly improve her ability to function. She also encourages others to participate in these physical activities, as well as many other activities and trips offered. Participating in activities offers an incredible opportunity to meet new friends and just enjoy life. She often tells to anybody who will listen. Pat Rose. All right, and our last woman of impact today, Lily Peschke. Lily. Hello, Lily. Last but not least, right? That's how they phrase it, right? All right. Lily was born in Hamburg, Germany. You would never know that when you speak to her. She was 10 years old when World War II began, and her school was bombed during the war. Later in life, her mother found an all-girls business school, and Lily was able to gain sufficient knowledge and experience to become a secretary, which had always been her dream. Due to the war, it was difficult to find a job in her town, which had been two-thirds destroyed. Lily and her family had to face many hardships and had to help each other to survive. Eventually, she was able to find work in sales, but it required 3 years of apprenticeship. She was good at bookkeeping, so her boss gave her additional responsibilities. Lily met her husband later, and they got married in 1952. They immigrated to Delaware in the United States in 1953. After 5 years, they moved to Philadelphia, where Lily held several jobs. One of her jobs was at a senior home where she oversaw the craft room because she was well-versed in crocheting and knitting. In the summer, they hosted an intergenerational camp where kids helped with special projects that made the older residents happy. To support themselves, they hosted several fundraisers to generate revenue. In 1993, they moved to Florida, where a friend had a business that sold jewelry, fossils, and minerals. Lily partnered with her friend to run the store successfully for many years. After her husband's death, Lily decided to move to Southport Square. Once there, she initiated the crafts room and got a group of residents involved in several community projects. For example, they knitted bonnets for newborns at the hospital, made lap robes for the nursing home residents, created memory cards for residents to keep them warm, made fidget blankets for memory care residents, made blankets for homeless children in their county, and during the beginning of COVID, they made more than 500 masks for the campus. Very grateful for that. Thank you. These are just a few examples of their projects. A fellow resident, Heidi Kent, teamed with her on all these wonderful projects. Lessons learned during the war about the importance of teamwork and survival have influenced her behavior as a resident. She tries to connect with new residents and assists them in settling in. Additionally, she took the initiative to create the Pinnacle Club and encourages other residents to participate. These actions demonstrate her strong leadership skills and commitment to building a sense of community among residents. Lily's life was shaped by the challenges she faced during World War II, but she never lost her determination to achieve her dreams. Lily's story is one of resilience, hard work, and a commitment to making a positive impact on the world around her. She showed that even in the face of adversity, one can find a way to thrive and make a difference. Lily Peschke. Well, I will tell you, I am inspired by these women of impact. Incredible stories and just, what you all have contributed to society over your time here on this earth is incredible. And I am sure there are many hundreds of thousands of people that have been impacted by your work through your lives. So thank you for what you have done. I appreciate you all being here.